sex with children, sex with animals, sex with other players. You'd be surprised the shit that happens. Those numbers that get moved up and down, again, we just go into this. Those numbers that move up and down, your players that you're like, I know damn well we can have a better team than this. Guys, how many games have you watched? Is any of my men in here sports fans? I'm sorry to ruin this for you, but any of my men in here sports fans? Like, not anymore. Any of you?
2 years.
Yeah. Okay. So is there? Hello. Is there a team that you can look at right now and say, what is going on with the players?
Yeah, I'm a Chargers fan, so I did that with Phillip Rivers for years. Got 18 in one season, thrown in the first round playoffs.
Right. So when you look at that, do you see how the other players can't? Some of them can't hold a candle to the players. Do you see that? That's because their numbers are moved. So your sports, wrestlers, basketball players, baseball players, any type of sports has numbers, right? You have to maintain your body, your BMI. You have to maintain your stats. Football, you have to maintain your numbers for speed. Those numbers are moved. Go check them out. Those numbers are moved quickly, depending on what they take for sponsors. Now, what goes on upstairs is sponsors in the boxes or even on the players' playground. What they do is there's traffickers up there that are meeting with people who have promos. Those promos will get them cover magazines, MVP, deals, what's those called when you get to be on like a Coke commercial or you show up somewhere?
Endorsements?
Endorsements, thank you. The endorsements, they're up there in those boxes. Now what they do is they go up there and say, hey, I noticed you played really good today. We can move your numbers around and we can make you the star player. We can put you on a Center magazine. We can get you on this Coke commercial. And then they're like, I want to be the next LeBron. That's why he is LeBron. But, you know, legends never die. There's a reason for that. Kobe, too. LeBron. Some people asked me in December of 2020 when I brought up LeBron, they were like, you're thinking of Kobe. No, all niggas don't look the same. They just, I'm telling you right now, and I say niggas because I'm telling you those are niggas, but they don't look the same. And there's different dirt. And if you look, their numbers are different. Their base different. Their endorsements are different. If you go to the players that are sitting on the bench, they play way better than them. Men, have you seen that? Some of my 90s men, have you seen that? Like, the ones that are on the centerfolds and the magazines, you can look at the ones that are just like shooting just to practice and you're like, why isn't he playing? Because he's not taking the deals yet. He's not upstairs in those boxes having sex with children to help people do semen snatching. There's females up there that are adults that run up there to stay in those boxes. Those box seats you can get for family. You can get them for friends. You can get special tickets to have people kind of sitting up really high and watching the game instead of sitting in those nosebleed stadium tickets where you got to look down and feel like you're going to pass out, you know, squeeze your legs and hurt your knees when you're trying to like wipe off people's makeup getting out. You know what I mean? Those seats are expensive seats as well, but when you're sitting up in those box seats, those are the seats that when you're up there, you're making deals. You're making deals for numbers. You're making deals. There's some females up there that go up there to get the players' semen. Again, we talked about this a little bit, but getting their semen helps them get pregnant, which gives them child support, which pays their way for 18 years. If you steal a player's semen and you get pregnant, you sign you don't have to sign a non-disclosure. You do not have to sign a prenup. If they are able to bring the DNA back, that that's their kid. So some adult females stand up there and traffic themselves, is basically what I'm saying. And they do that on purpose. And what happened to me is here we go with the sweat again. I had to be in a situation where running down my leg and still somebody came up to me and made sure that they grabbed that to try to get pregnant by the player. Staples Stadium. I called my mom. This is documented with Child Protective Services. Nobody wanted to talk about it because they're players. Those are your sports team. America is based on what? So if all the men were to wake up and to put an end to the Super Bowl, if everybody would back out of sports, do you know what would happen? You would cripple the nation. If people knew that some of your sports games are CGI and video games, you'd cripple the nation. Men pay money. Men sit down in front of the TV. There's Super Bowl games. You know, wives are making chicken wings and beer and just trying to give their men a good time. You know what I mean? Like, just to watch a sports game that's realistic and sometimes in their video game is way better. Why? Because sometimes the players are not on the field. It's fake. Sometimes they are on the field. You see them dropping like flies lately? Just dropping like flies all over. Soccer, football, wrestling, all over the place. They just drop it. You see the fake ambulances pulling up? There's a reason for that. There's another thing that happens, cloning in the players' playground. Some of them are not the players that you see. Some of them have on prosthetics. Some of them are, I'd say, creatures. They're hybrid. That does exist, where their DNA is taken, again, for cloning facilities, like hair shaved, teeth pulled out, DNA taken, things like that. So let's say they break their hand quickly. There's something that can be used with machines. So med beds. We all know about med beds, right? So there's a definition of med beds going on backwards right now. If somebody hurts themselves, they can get well like that in sports because it's a DNA thing. They take their DNA, they use that for cloning facilities, they re-bring them back, and they're back to playing. Even though they may be a shitty player, they need their face. So let's say some of them have one leg. Some of them you'll see them dribbling together. It'll look like somebody carried the basketball over to the hoop. Like, you know, those three-pointers that don't even look like three-pointers? And you're like, how the hell did... And then all the men are like, yeah! Like, but in reality, it's a green screen. Somebody takes that ball and moves it to the hoop and then checks the TV, and what's the ratings? Did we go up? Cool. Let's do that again. There's somebody who remotes your commercials as you watch them. You know, those commercials that pop up on the regular TV, those 3 commercials. There's somebody who sits in the background and actually makes those commercials pop up on your TV screen. That's their job. I don't know what that's called, but that's their job. Your whole world is a stage. How I know that is because I've been up there with them. I had to sleep with one of the players. I didn't even sleep with one of them. I was assaulted by one of the players that had a prosthetic cheek. And when he took it off, like the I don't even know what was going on inside of his mouth. I could smell it. It was gross. Again, the research is endless. And I'm not... Why? Who would want to sit here and make this How can you make this example, because it's a basic example. It's the most basic example that you can get on contracts like this, on blueprints like this, on the analogies that we're about to use. So I'm going to use the military as an example. When you go into the military, there's clearances that they get, right? Let's say the Navy. Who knows someone in the Navy that has an E4 clearance? E7 clearance. Okay. When you get to an E4 or an E7, by the time you are at an E4, you are completely broken down and you do have ulcers. By E7, your mind is not your own at all. By E7, your mind is a robot. Does that make sense? You are now, yes sir, no ma'am. You will stand in the cold even if that is abuse. I know at one point that the military does break people down to say, like, I need you to be a soldier. You know, there's some people who go into the military and their family puts them into the military. Like, you need discipline. You need to learn new things. You need to be able to fend for yourself, right? But by E4 in the Navy, they have passed that point of dissociative identity disorder. And what that means, if you do not know what DID is, it means that they have broken their mind, or split their mind in a way that they now can, how can I say this? So let's say that soldier that you know, so when they leave, sometimes they're a really goofy person, right? Sometimes out of control, and you think that that's what's gonna help them in the military, right? When they come back, that goofy person that you know is angry, right? Have you ever seen that? Or that goofy person that you know, you can't get them to crack or smile for nothing. However, sometimes they'll act childlike if you bring something up to them, and maybe it'll just one day that they're like, oh, and you're like, oh my gosh, I thought that was gonna break your face to smile again, right? I didn't know you were still there. Like, I missed you. Have you ever had a situation with a kid who has been in foster care or through some type of trauma response? Sometimes they can be from 5 years old. Some people really don't like it to speak on the teenagers, because I feel like the teenagers are harder to get to because they've been broken down so much. By that time, your mind is already on another level because of what age you're at. But when you're broken down with trauma, it's easier to get to you, right? So has anybody ever had this situation, even with your biological child, where your child may come home and is going through something and you can look at them and say, that's not my child? Anybody ever went through that? Yeah. You can look at them and say, I know for a fact that's not my kid. There's a look in their eyes that is vacant. There's a look in their eyes that's angry or almost evil. And you're like, I didn't raise that. I know I may have messed up because of what parent gets a memo book, right? But I didn't raise that. Do you know what I'm saying? And that saying comes out of your mouth. That's not my kid. Has anybody ever went through that?
Yeah.
Okay. Some that don't understand, their trauma reverts back to that time. So if you were raped around that time of year, if you were beat as a kid around that time of year, if you were in the military and that's when your programming was completely stopped around that time of the year, that time of the year will always be held. You'll notice it.
Your body remembers. You might not consciously say, you know what, oh, so-and-so died, so I'm going to be sad, probably. It's usually unconscious, but you still are having the same reactions. Your body's still responding the same. Your body's going through all that again.
So, dealing with kids that, you know, there's some kids that like, yeah, they like attention, right? There's some kids that you can see that this is an attention thing. They're working through something, their hormones out of whack, right? You can see those with some people and some kids. But with some other kids, you're like, something don't seem right. It's more than attention. It's more in themselves. Mental asylums speak for themselves. Anybody who is placed in a mental asylum has been traumatized in some way, shape, fashion, or form. There is no one who wants to volunteer to be in the hospital, is there? There's some people who get a kick on that stuff, like Munchausen, but there are kids and there are adults who would give anything to not be bossed around or controlled, right? Everybody wants to be free. Everybody wants to be able to get up and do their own thing. That's why the pandemic was such hell. You know what I mean? Being told you can't go outside versus being, knowing that you can just get up and walk out of your door, it was harder, right? You know what I mean? So if you honestly think about it when it comes to the mental asylums, anybody who is placed in the mental asylum, there's trauma. It speaks for itself. That's why we ask people to just be careful with people. We had some organizations and some foundations that tried to jump at me. And somebody's first comment was, she doesn't have MK Ultra because she doesn't have DID. And you remember when everybody was asking me about DID and I kept saying that's a red light question, or don't ask me a Saturday question on a Monday? You know what I mean? And I wouldn't answer it because if I just gave you the information that we're giving you right now, like some of you are in here in this realm of information, you're going to go out of here and you're going to be like, my mind is blown. And I don't know what to do with it. Like, I don't know which way to go with it. I don't know where to research first. And then when I finally realized that this is going on in my own family, when I finally realized that I've had these issues myself, then that means that I have to look at it. right? Some of you that are sitting in here have dissociative identity disorder to some type, to some degree. Car accidents. If you've ever been in a car accident to the point where you're pushing the imaginary brake, you know what I mean? Where if somebody is going too fast and you're like grabbing onto the old shit and pushing on the brake, like, you know what I mean, and driving with them, that's trauma. So that means that that person that is so freaked out by that shock split during that accident. And so now there's some people who act a different way or behave a different way every time they get in a car, every time they hear a loud car noise, it flips them into trigger code. There's trigger codes like colors. You can trigger people with colored patterns. You can trigger people with, and so some people hear that word trigger. And again, use it in a way that doesn't make sense. When you're triggered by something, your PTSD will spark and it will send you spiraling. Again, being so upset at yourself that you can't pull yourself out of a depression. Not knowing how you got to this zone where you feel like you can't pull yourself out of anger, of depression, of so many things. You know what I'm talking about? Those are trigger codes. So people use that, I'm triggered, and don't even understand that. There's some people who just have never had family. And being lonely for a very long time caused them to have to grow up too fast. You know that phrase? That means DID. Everybody uses that phrase and they don't know what that means. As a kid, if you were 8 years old and you had to fend for yourself, you had to make your own food, you had to be your own parent, and you had to do that up until the age that you were 16 or 17 years old, you have DID. And it's no telling exactly how many, because what had to happen is you had to go somewhere and you had to basically drown that little kid to become an adult as a kid. Splitting. It's disassociating. Have you ever been driving somewhere and you're like, I think I zoned out, I don't even know how I got here. Yeah? Disassociating. There's 3 different types of dissociative identity disorder. You might want to look them up. There's 3 different types. There's amnesia, there's DID, and then there's another one. There's like, there's no one, but I can't exactly remember. But there's 3 types of DID. And everybody has that spectrum of DID. It just depends on where you land with trauma. So there's some people who are like, I'm fine. I'm absolutely fine, but I didn't have a mom growing up. I'm fine, but I didn't have a father growing up. I'm fine, but I didn't have any friends. I was lonely at school. I was bullied a lot. So that hard shell that you have to grow to get to school, that's DID. You walk in, you sit down as this person, but you walk in as this person. Do you know what I mean? And then when you leave, you're back to this person. That's not just creating an exterior barrier. That's switching your personalities so you can cope with what's going on. It's a coping mechanism. Hence, trauma. Hence, trauma response. Make sense? It's a lot. That's why I say it's a lot. Yeah? Yeah?
Yeah.
What?